Eva Ramirez blended into the hospital halls like any other nurse, scrubs clean but plain, voice soft and steady. No one suspected the woman quietly tending to patients had survived one of the most secret and deadly missions in recent military history. When a brash soldier publicly challenged her skills and dismissed her presence, he had no idea who he was provoking. But then, as Eva's sleeve slipped back, the tattoo inked deep on her forearm caught the light. The emblem only known to ghost unit survivors, the few who lived through a mission so harrowing it was erased from records. The room fell silent. Because that tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a story of sacrifice, resilience, and a warrior whose quiet strength commanded respect without a word. Just a quick little pause before I forget. If you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, please leave a like and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump back in. Fort Ashland Medical Facility was quiet that morning, but the tension beneath the surface wasn't. The base's annual Joint Readiness Inspection was underway, and the visiting brass made the air feel twice as heavy. In the triage tent outside the main barracks, 28-year-old Lieutenant Eva Ramirez stood quietly near the supply crate, sleeves rolled to the elbows of her fitted combat medic uniform. Her stethoscope hung at her neck, boots perfectly laced, not a wrinkle on her OCPs. Her eyes were calm, still, observing. Across the lot, a group of young enlisted medics were huddled near the Humvee, buzzing with adrenaline over the surprise inspection and a rare visit from General Malcolm Pierce, a four-star whose very name made officers stiffen and enlisted troops forget how to breathe. Corpsman Danny Trent, 24, cocky and loud, pointed toward Eva with a smirk. "She's just admin," he said to the group. "Probably hasn't even seen a field wound, much less treated one under fire. Probably Googled how to start in 4. The others chuckled, nervous, but eager to follow the joke. Trent stepped forward, voice louder now, as if performing. "Hey, ma'am, think you could show me where the Band-Aids are? We might get a paper cutout here." A couple of the other medics snickered. One tried to hide his grin behind a water bottle. Eva didn't answer. She turned slowly, met his eyes, said nothing, and that silence, measured and unreadable, landed like a stone in the center of the tent. For a fraction of a second, the mood faltered. But Trent pushed on. Don't be shy. I'm just playing. You're one of the good ones. Probably passed every test sitting in air conditioning while the rest of us trained in the dirt." Another pause. Then Eva calmly walked over to the crate, unlatched the side, and began inventorying syringes. Her motions were precise, methodical, like clockwork. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Trent scoffed and turned away. Exactly. Behind her, one of the senior medics, Staff Sergeant Lena Kravitz, 34, frowned faintly. She hadn't said a word yet, but her eyes narrowed, just slightly, as she glanced at Eva's posture, spine straight, hands steady, movement silent. Something about that quiet rubbed her the wrong way. Not weakness. Something else. Something she'd seen once before, years ago. General Malcolm Pierce arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, flanked by a security escort and 2 civilian aides in crisp suits. His presence radiated command, medals perfectly aligned, creases sharp as blades, boots polished to an impossible sheen. The inspection tour had reached the triage station, and the medics snapped into formation. Corpsman Danny Trent, already angling for visibility, stepped forward. "Sir, welcome to Fort Ashland Field Medical. I'll be giving you the walkthrough of our emergency response setup." General Pierce barely nodded. His eyes scanned the tent, methodical, penetrating, then settled, briefly, on Eva Ramirez. He looked at her longer than expected, then moved on. Trent started the tour, his voice louder now, infused with a rehearsed sense of pride. He gestured at the supplies, spouted acronyms, and rattled off standard procedures like he was teaching a class. Eva remained near the edge of the tent, quietly sorting and logging equipment. She wasn't trying to disappear. She simply wasn't interested in taking space that wasn't hers. The aide beside the general scribbled notes as Trent spoke. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Kravitz kept watching Eva, her attention split between Trent's performance and Eva's stillness. Something was off. Not wrong, just rare. It was in the way Eva reached for a bandage roll without looking, not breaking rhythm. or how she shifted her weight while standing. Not like a nurse, but like someone trained to pivot under fire. Her head didn't twitch with every movement or loud voice. It turned with intent. With precision. Kravitz noticed the scar then, high on Eva's collarbone, just peeking past the edge of her undershirt. Clean. Surgical. Too clean to be accidental. Too calm to be cosmetic. Lieutenant, the general suddenly said, breaking away from Trent's monologue. Where were you stationed last? Eva looked up, expression unreadable. Overseas, sir. Pierce waited, expecting more. She didn't elaborate. Trent laughed uncomfortably. Probably Ramstein, right? Must have been tough, keeping coffee warm. Eva didn't blink. She just tilted her head slightly, and her sleeve shifted. For the briefest second, a breath, no more, Kravitz saw the tail edge of black ink under Eva's left forearm. Not a medical caduceus. Not a unit patch. Something older. Meaner. Purposeful. It was gone as fast as it appeared. But the silence that followed lingered. And Kravitz suddenly felt cold. Eva didn't flinch when the general walked on. She didn't try to explain herself to Trent. She didn't make a sound. She returned to her inventory list. The tent began to fill again with background noise. Boots scuffing, zippers, chatter, but something had changed. Staff Sergeant Kravitz leaned slightly back, arms crossed, eyes still on Eva. Not judging, studying. Eva moved like she was born into this space. No wasted energy. Every gesture efficient. Her quiet wasn't timid, it was trained, cultivated. When a rookie medic fumbled a sterilized packet and let it hit the floor, Eva caught it mid-air without turning her head. Smooth. Natural. She handed it back without a word. The rookie looked at her like she had just pulled off a magic trick. Kravitz walked over slowly. Lieutenant, she said, keeping her tone even. You with the 47th Medical out of Fort Bragg? Eva shook her head once. No, Sergeant. Kravitz frowned. Which unit then? Another pause. Eva's voice stayed level. Detached. TDY. Temporary duty. It explained nothing. Or everything. Kravitz studied her closer now, the kind of observation honed over deployments. Eva's posture was textbook, but not in a parade ground way. It was quiet readiness. Centered weight. Awareness of exits. Then Kravitz noticed the boots. Regulation, but modified. The soles weren't standard issue. Silent tread. The laces were bar-laced, a method rarely taught anymore. Kravitz had only seen that on one kind of operator, those trained not to leave footprints. Ghosts. Ever serve in Africa? Kravitz asked gently. Eva didn't answer, but her hand paused. Just for a second. That was enough. Kravitz stepped back, her expression unreadable now. Across the tent, Trent was still basking in his own spotlight. He kept looking over toward Eva, sneering to his buddy beside him. See? Cold as ice. Bet she got her commission online. Eva's hand moved again, not toward him, just to her left sleeve. She adjusted it slightly. Not revealing, not hiding, just deliberate. And for the briefest moment, under the shifting light of the tent canvas, a faint outline shimmered under the skin of her forearm. It wasn't just ink. It was a memory burned into flesh. Kravitz looked away, her throat suddenly dry. Eva finished logging the supply count, initialing the clipboard with a clean, steady stroke. Her handwriting was disciplined, not stiff, but sharp. Letters upright, aligned, spaced with the kind of precision that came from hours under pressure. The kind of writing found in field reports written under red light and mortar fire. She clipped the pen back to her sleeve and stepped aside to make room at the crate. No one thanked her. She didn't expect them to. Staff Sergeant Kravitz was still watching. Not openly, just enough to observe. It was how Eva carried silence that struck her most. Most people, even good ones, tried to fill the air with something. A smile, a quip, a nervous shuffle. Eva did none of that. Her quiet wasn't absence. It was wait, like she was waiting for something. Or someone. Like she'd done this before, 1,000 times, in 100 places the rest of them wouldn't even recognize on a map. Kravitz had seen this kind of stillness in only one other person. Her old squad leader in the Hindu Kush. A man who could sit in pitch-black silence for 20 hours, listening for footfall. Who never spoke unless it mattered. The same stillness was in Eva now. Not anxiety. Readiness. General Pierce had continued the inspection outside, leaving the tree-off tent to cool under his absence. The younger medics relaxed, stretching or checking phones. The jokes faded for the moment. Eva didn't move from her spot. She wasn't frozen. She was present. Inside her chest, however, a flicker of something long buried stirred. Not fear, not resentment, but something heavier. Memory. A name whispered in a comms headset. A voice that never answered again. Her fingers brushed her left forearm, just above the ink. A habit. Not to check that it was still there. Just to feel it. 2 out, Ramirez. Get them home. The memory echoed. Sharp, fast, and gone. She blinked once, exhaled through her nose, and the thought vanished. Across the tent, Danny Trent cracked another joke. You'd think she was casing the place. What's she waiting for? A drone strike? Another round of half-laughs. Eva didn't respond. But Kravitz saw it. The way her jaw tightened, not in anger, but in grief. And that was when it hit her. This woman wasn't just a nurse. She was surviving something none of them could even name. The sunlight outside the triage tent was harsh now, casting long slats of shadow across the canvas floor. Inside, things had grown quieter, not out of respect, but confusion. People couldn't quite name what they were feeling. Kravitz stood a little straighter now, arms folded, eyes shifting between Eva and Trent. The difference between the two was no longer subtle. One tried to control the room with noise. The other commanded it with stillness. Private Haley Morgan, 21, sat on an ammo crate near the supply rack. She'd only been in uniform 6 months, still wore her cap a little too low and her belt a little too tight. But she'd seen enough today to feel uncomfortable. She leaned over to her friend, whispering, "Why's he still going at her?" She didn't even say anything back. Her friend shrugged. "Guess he thinks it's funny." Morgan looked at Eva again, not mocking this time, just curious. The way she stood, her body didn't sway when she rested. No casual lean, no idle fidgeting, like she was always balanced, as if some invisible weight was resting across her shoulders and she'd learned not to shift under it. General Pierce re-entered the tent, this time alone. He was inspecting things slower now, paying attention not just to equipment but the people. He walked past Eva without stopping, but his eyes flicked toward her again. Another glance. Slight. Intentional. She didn't meet it, but she knew he was watching. Trent, ever opportunistic, snapped into step beside the general. "Sir, if you're interested, I can walk you through the evac protocols. I've been running drills with the new guys. We've got a clean 90-second load time from critical wound to vehicle." Pierce said nothing. He scanned the crate next to Eva, nodded once, and moved on. Morgan, still watching, noticed something odd. Eva hadn't looked at a single chart since she started. She hadn't needed to. She knew what was in every crate, down to the gauge size of each needle. "Hey," Morgan whispered to her friend. "She's not a normal field nurse." Her friend blinked. "What do you mean?" Morgan stared. "I don't know. Just watch her hands." They were still, but when they moved like they'd been taught another language. One without words. And something about that made her uneasy. Like they'd been wrong. Like all of them had. Outside, the day carried on like any other. Choppers pulsed in the distance. Boots struck gravel with routine rhythm, and radios buzzed with unreadable chatter. But inside the tent, the air had changed. Private Haley Morgan wasn't the only one who felt it anymore. Staff Sergeant Kravitz was shifting her weight more now, not from nerves, but instinct. Her eyes tracked every small motion. She watched Eva's hands as she finished labeling a trauma pack. No wasted motion. No hesitation. She watched how Eva moved when someone brushed past her, always leaving just enough space for escape or counter. And when Eva did speak, once, to a junior medic asking about a mislabeled vial, it was quiet, clear, and technically perfect. Not casual knowledge. Embedded knowledge. Danny Trent, meanwhile, had grown louder. Maybe because he sensed the shift, too. The room wasn't following him like it did earlier. The laughs didn't land the same. Morgan stopped smiling at his jokes. Even his buddy, Specialist Cole Ramsey, was starting to glance toward Eva instead of laughing on cue. So Trent doubled down. He picked up a surgical tray and said, loud enough for all to hear, "Careful, guys. If Nurse Ramirez here labels something wrong, we might have to call in air support to sort it out." No one laughed. Trent blinked. Kravitz turned toward him, lips pressed tight. "That's enough, corpseman." Trent tried to chuckle. "I'm just keeping things light." "Then lower your voice." He opened his mouth to respond, but froze. Because Eva had turned toward him. She didn't speak. But she was standing now, Not behind the crate, not off to the side. In full view. Her arms were relaxed at her sides, hands open, feet at shoulder width. Not aggressive, not afraid, just present. Trent blinked, because for the first time, he noticed something about her eyes. Not the color, the weight. Like she'd seen through him. Not in a smug way. In a clinical one. Evaluated. Cataloged. Moved on. He looked away first. Morgan leaned toward Kravitz, voice barely a whisper. What's with her? Kravitz didn't answer for a long time. Then, quietly, she's not a nurse. A beat of silence. Not just, anyway. Eva sat down on a weathered bench just outside the tent, away from the noise, but close enough to hear the voices through the canvas walls. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows from the generator unit beside her. Her posture never changed. Feet flat, hands on knees, head slightly bowed. From inside, Danny Trent's voice drifted in, quieter now, almost restrained. But the damage had already been done. She heard him mutter, "She's messing with the vibe." Eva closed her eyes. She wasn't angry. She was tired. In her left hand, hidden by the bend of her knee, her thumb ran over the edge of a small, worn leather band looped around her middle finger. It wasn't regulation. It wasn't jewelry. It was a memory. A simple, dark strip of leather, stitched with faded red thread, torn from the glove of Sergeant Major Alan Reed. Ghost Unit, Echo Division, 3rd Team. Killed in Mosul, 6 years ago. He'd slipped it onto her hand before they breached the tunnel. "You'll need a grip more than luck," he'd whispered. He hadn't made it back out. Eva had never taken it off. Inside the tent, Kravitz stepped to the edge of the entrance and looked out. She watched Eva in silence for a long moment, eyes catching the slight movement of her thumb over the band. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. She just knew. Kravitz turned back inside. Private Morgan followed her gaze, confused. "What is it?" "She's got that look," Kravitz murmured. "What look?" "The one that comes after the mission. After the one that goes wrong." Morgan hesitated. "You think she's what?" "A spook." Kravitz shook her head. "No. Ghosts don't talk. They don't brag. They don't correct you. They just exist." Morgan frowned. "But she's a nurse." "Not first." Outside, Eva shifted slightly, feeling the ache in her side. Old scar tissue pulling beneath her ribs. A fragment from an IED she never fully got removed. The doctors had warned her. "Every time you move, you'll feel it." "Good," she'd said. "Let it stay. Remind me what it cost." The tent flapped slightly in the wind. The sky was so blue it hurt to look at. Eva didn't. She just breathed, slow, steady, quiet. The kind of breath that came from someone who'd learned how to hold it for hours, waiting for the shot that never came. 6 years earlier, the tunnel stank of rot and cordite. 8 meters wide, shoulder high at best. Black as a grave. Concrete walls sweated with trapped heat as the team moved. Rifles raised, breath slow. Ghost 3, status, came through the comms, a low whisper from command. Eva clicked twice on her mic, standard for still moving. Reed was ahead, crouched, eyes scanning. Eva followed close. Behind her, Corporal Dinesh, quiet, solid, dependable, carried the rear. They had 30 seconds before the target moved. That was all the intelligence gave them. That, and a warning. If you see the mark, pull her out. She's worth more than the rest. Eva hated that. She'd memorized every face in that unit. They were hers. No one was worth more than the other. The only thing that mattered was who walked out. The blast came without sound. Just a flash, a punch of air, and black. Then red. Then silence. Back to the present. Eva opened her eyes. The wind had shifted. The base flag fluttered sharply. Her breathing hadn't changed. Inside the tent, Private Morgan watched Kravitz with growing unease. "That tattoo," she said quietly. "The one on her arm, you saw it?" Kravitz nodded once. "Part of it. What was it?" Kravitz hesitated. "Black ink. Minimalist. Tri-blade." Morgan's eyes widened. "That's a myth." Kravitz said nothing. The Ghost Unit was a name whispered in training circles and war stories. Technically decommissioned. Officially erased. No records. No photos. No graves with names. Only stories. That the survivors, all 5 of them, if the rumors were true, had a mark burned into them by the last field commander as a vow. No rank. No reward. Just silence. They were called ghosts for a reason. Was it her? Morgan asked. Kravitz didn't reply. Outside, Eva stood. Not quickly. Not with ceremony. She just rose, adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, and for a second, the full shape of the tattoo surfaced in the sun. A triangle of 3-notched blades. One side scarred. No text. No unit. No flourish. Just memory. And when she turned toward the tent again, her eyes weren't tired anymore. They were clear, like someone who'd carried the weight long enough, and was ready, now, to hand it back. General Pierce lingered near the far end of the triage tent, his inspection notes held loosely in one hand, though he hadn't written a word in several minutes. His gaze, for the third time, returned to Eva, not to the others. To her. There was recognition there, not full, not spoken, but present, like trying to remember a dream you'd convinced yourself wasn't real. He gave a small nod to his aide and stepped out into the sunlight, walking slowly in Eva's direction. Inside, Kravitz was still watching, arms now folded tightly. Morgan whispered again, "If she's what you think she is, what is she doing here?" "Just stocking bandages." Kravitz didn't take her eyes off Eva. Hiding. Outside, Eva stood quietly as the general approached. Her spine straightened slightly, her gaze locked forward, not defiant, not deferent. Just still. Pierce stopped a pace away, looked her over, slowly. "Lieutenant Ramirez," he said at last. "You were attached to the 9th? "No, sir." "Fort Bragg?" "No, sir." A pause. "Where, then?" She looked at him. Just looked. And in that moment, something shifted in the general's face, a flicker of memory. The way her shoulders aligned. The scar under her collarbone. The wristband. And the tattoo. His voice dropped a fraction. "Mosul." Eva's jaw didn't move, but her eyes said everything. He exhaled softly, almost inaudibly. "I see." Behind them, Trent watched from the edge of the tent, confused. "She doesn't talk much, huh?" The aide beside him replied absently, "She's not supposed to." "What?" The aide blinked, realized what he'd said. Said nothing more. Morgan stepped forward beside Kravitz. "So what now?" "We just pretend like she's not." "She's not what?" Kravitz interrupted quietly. Morgan faltered. She had no name to put on what Eva was. Not yet. But the way General Pierce now stood straighter, not out of pride, but respect, said enough. He nodded once more to Eva. She nodded back. And that was it. No salute. No rank exchange. Just recognition. And when he turned and walked away, the weight he left behind was heavier than before. Eva remained silent. But the whisper had already started to ripple through the tent. That wasn't just a nurse. The weight of General Pierce's silent exchange with Eva hadn't gone unnoticed. Not entirely. Most didn't know what they'd seen, but they'd felt it. A pause too long. A nod too deliberate. And a name left unsaid. That alone was enough to make Trent nervous. He stood at the edge of the tent, trying to rationalize what he'd just seen. He crossed his arms, uncrossed them, glanced at his buddy Cole, who now seemed a little more interested in Eva than in the latest barracks gossip. Trent scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. So what? Now she's too important to talk to anyone. Just 'cause she played mannequin while the general walked through. Eva was returning to the med station, gloves on, checking oxygen levels in the trauma tank. She didn't look up, not even slightly. The lack of reaction stung more than any words could have. "I asked you a question, ma'am," Trent continued, stepping closer. "You think you're better than the rest of us?" "Nothing." His voice sharpened. "Or are you hiding something behind that sleeve of yours?" That last part cracked through the air. It didn't sound like a joke. Not even to him. Kravitz turned her head sharply. "Trent." But Eva was already straightening. She turned, slowly, evenly, and looked him dead in the eye. "No," she said, voice calm. "I'm not better than you." Trent opened his mouth, but she kept going. "I'm just no longer interested in proving anything to people who haven't earned the right to ask." That sentence hit like a slap. The med tent was silent now. Even Morgan had stopped breathing. Trent stepped forward again, trying to save face. "You talk like some kind of war hero, but all I see is a woman hiding behind a rank and a patch." Eva tilted her head, studied him like she'd studied the desert before a breach. And then, gently, "If you truly need proof, then test me." "What? You want to spar? You want to measure something? You want to feel taller than me? Fine." She took one step forward. Her boots didn't stomp. They landed. "Afterward," she said, voice lower now, "you'll apologize. Publicly. To everyone here. And you'll mean it." A slow, stunned beat passed. And then Trent, caught between fear and bravado, laughed. "You're on." He didn't realize the room was already watching him like a man walking toward a cliff. And Eva? She just pulled her sleeve back, tied her hair, and said nothing. The moment Eva issued her challenge, the entire triage tent fell into a heavy silence, as if the air itself had thickened. Conversations ceased abruptly. Even the distant hum of generators and the sporadic chirp of radios seemed muted, replaced by the collective intake of breath held by everyone present. Corpseman Danny Trent, who moments ago had worn his arrogance like armor, now looked smaller. His smirk faded, replaced by a tight-lipped grimace. His eyes flicked nervously across the faces of the medics, the officers, and even General Malcolm Pierce, who stood near the tent's entrance. The general's expression was inscrutable, his gaze narrowing ever so slightly as he took in the quiet authority radiating from Eva. Staff Sergeant Lena Kravitz stepped forward, folding her arms tightly across her chest. She exuded calm confidence, the kind born of experience, and her eyes locked on Eva with something almost like respect, tempered by concern. Beside her, Private Haley Morgan tightened the strap on her cap, her youthful face pale but alert. Specialist Cole Ramsey, usually quick with sarcastic remarks, was uncharacteristically silent, watching the unfolding scene with rapt attention. Eva, seemingly unaffected by the scrutiny, slowly rolled up the sleeve of her uniform. The tattoo on her forearm was revealed in full, a stark, minimalist design of three notched blades intertwined in a triangle, the emblem of the Ghost Unit. The mark was infamous among special operations circles, whispered about in war stories, but officially erased from records. Only the handful who survived bore it, each carrying a legacy wrapped in silence. The room was dead silent, the weight of that symbol sinking into every person's consciousness. No one spoke. No one breathed louder than a whisper. The tension was palpable, electric, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Danny Trent swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling. His gaze flicked from Eva's unwavering eyes to the tattoo and back. Pride warred with an instinctual fear, a realization that this wasn't a game or a simple show of bravado anymore. This was something different, something serious. Eva held his gaze, steady and unflinching. She wasn't here to provoke or belittle. She was here to reclaim a dignity that had been stripped away by assumptions and disrespect. At that moment, a soft voice cut through the silence. It was Kravitz, barely above a whisper, but heard by all. Everyone's watching now. Morgan nodded slowly, eyes wide. And it feels like more than just a fight. The atmosphere in the tent shifted again, deeper now, no longer a simple challenge, but an unspoken reckoning. Trent took a sharp breath and squared his shoulders. Fine, let's get this over with. Eva exhaled deliberately, grounding herself. Her stance was fluid yet anchored, the discipline of countless hours of training settling into every muscle. Years of silent service, sacrifice, and survival coalesced into that one poised moment. The world outside the tent blurred. Only the two of them, the unspoken history between them, and the weight of everyone watching remained. The challenge had become inevitable. The triage tent seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the hum of the bass faded into the background, replaced by the sharp focus of this moment. Eva stood steady, feet rooted shoulder-width apart, the weight of years compressed into a quiet readiness that demanded nothing, yet commanded everything. Her eyes locked on Trent's, calm and unreadable. There was no anger, no challenge, just a cold clarity that unsettled him more than any shouted insult could. Slowly, she shifted her weight, a subtle realignment born from countless hours of tactical training. Her fingers flexed lightly, not in tension but in preparation, tracing the edges of invisible lines in the dust at her boots. The slightest rise of her shoulders, the minuscule tilt of her head, all precise movements executed with fluid grace. The surrounding medics drew back instinctively, sensing the silent gravity that had descended. Staff Sergeant Kravitz's lips pressed together, eyes sharp and calculating. Private Morgan's breath caught, fingers tightening on the hem of her uniform shirt. Specialist Ramsey's usual smirk was gone, replaced by a quiet awe. General Pierce lingered just outside the tent's flap, observing with the keen eye of a seasoned commander. His gaze flicked from Eva's stance to Trent's shifting weight, noting every detail with professional scrutiny. Trent forced himself to stand taller, swallowing the knot forming in his throat. His hands clenched briefly before relaxing into fists at his sides. He tried to steady his breathing, though it was shallow and quickening. Eva's gaze remained steady, her body language exuding a serene confidence. No wasted motion, no desperation, just a poised, measured presence honed by hardship and relentless discipline. In that charged stillness, time seemed to stretch and bend. The seconds felt like minutes, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken stories. Then, almost imperceptibly, Eva adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, revealing once more the edges of the dark tattoo, the emblem of the ghost unit, a symbol heavy with meaning and sacrifice. A quiet murmur rippled through the gathered onlookers, quickly stifled by the weight of what was about to unfold. The moment was ripe, balanced on the knife edge between silence and action. Eva's breath deepened slightly, centering herself. The calm before the storm. The late morning sunlight filtered through the worn canvas of the triage tent, casting soft, shifting shadows that danced across the dusty ground. Every figure inside seemed to move in slow motion, caught in the tension that had settled like a thick fog over the small space. Time itself felt distorted, seconds stretching, compressing, weighed down by the gravity of what was about to unfold. Eva Ramirez stood motionless, her breathing steady and deep, controlled. Each inhalation was slow, deliberate, a rhythm honed from years of training under fire, where every breath counted and panic could mean death. She was the very embodiment of calm, but beneath that surface lay a readiness so intense it almost vibrated. Her senses sharpened beyond ordinary perception. She was aware of everything. The faint scrape of boots shifting on canvas, the subtle intake of breath from Private Haley Morgan as the young medic gripped the edge of her uniform in nervous anticipation, the almost imperceptible rustling of Staff Sergeant Kravitz's fatigues as she leaned forward, eyes narrowed in focus. Even the distant drone of helicopters and murmured radio chatter outside faded into a low hum, like the background noise of a battlefield long abandoned. Eva's hands flexed, fingers curling with a practiced precision, like coiling springs ready to release. The dark tattoo on her forearm, the emblem marking her as one of the few ghost unit survivors, pulsed beneath her sleeve, not with light, but with memory. Each line of ink carried the weight of lost comrades, unspoken promises, and silent scars. Corpsman Danny Trent's face was pale, the confident smirk vanished, replaced by a taut, tight-lipped grimace. His eyes flicked nervously to the tattoo, then away, as if the mere sight unsettled him. The bravado he'd wielded like armor now seemed fragile, a thin veil barely holding back fear. For the first time, he realized this wasn't a simple challenge or childish game. It was a confrontation with history, with experience, with something far greater than himself. The medics surrounding them had instinctively taken a step back, creating a clearing that felt sacred and charged. Private Morgan whispered under her breath, "This is it," barely audible but heard by those closest. Eva adjusted her stance subtly, feet firmly planted shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, body weight centered. The slightest tilt of her head, the softening of her gaze, conveyed the quiet confidence of someone who has endured unthinkable trials and emerged unbroken. There was no aggression in her posture, only a poised readiness born of countless missions where split-second decisions meant life or death. Time slowed even further. The world outside the tent faded to a distant echo. There was only the stillness between two people, the unspoken history stretching between them like an invisible thread. Staff Sergeant Kravitz's eyes glistened with recognition, a flicker of respect tempered by awe. Haley Morgan's hands trembled as she gripped her cap tighter, watching silently, knowing she was witnessing something rare, a silent reckoning. Eva's breath deepened, muscles coiled. The moment had come to show the true strength beneath the calm. This was no ordinary fight. It was a testament. The stillness inside the triage tent had become nearly unbearable, a charged silence that held the breath of everyone present. Eva stood poised, her body a study in quiet control, embodying the discipline born from countless missions, countless moments where hesitation meant death. Her feet were planted firmly, shoulder-width apart, grounding her to the dusty canvas floor beneath her boots, as if drawing strength from the earth itself. She shifted ever so slightly, a nearly imperceptible movement, but one that carried immense weight. The subtle pivot of her hips, the micro-adjustment of her stance to better balance her weight on the balls of her feet, was a sign familiar only to those trained in combat. It was the calm before the storm, the moment when mind and body become one, synchronized and ready to respond instantly. Her eyes, steady and unflinching, locked onto Danny Trent's uncertain gaze. There was no trace of anger or arrogance in her expression, only a deep, measured calm, the kind of quiet confidence forged in the crucible of relentless pressure and loss. Her gaze was not a challenge. It was a statement. She had endured worse, survived, and was no longer interested in proving anything to those who doubted her. Around her, the crowd's reaction was subtle but telling. Staff Sergeant Lena Kravitz straightened her back, muscles tense but controlled, the sharpness in her eyes revealing a profound respect tempered by the seriousness of the moment. Private Haley Morgan's fingers clenched nervously at the edge of her uniform, her wide eyes shifting between Eva's poised readiness and Trent's faltering bravado. Specialist Cole Ramsey's typical smirk had vanished, replaced by a rigid jaw and clenched fists, betraying his unease. General Malcolm Pierce lingered just outside the tent's entrance, his posture rigid, lips pressed into a thin line. His gaze flicked repeatedly between Eva and Trent, narrowing with quiet approval as a man who recognized the gravity of what was about to unfold. His presence carried an unspoken authority, a reminder that this was no petty squabble, but a reckoning. Eva's fingers lightly traced the edge of her rolled-up sleeve, revealing again the tattoo etched deep into her skin, the emblem of the Ghost Unit. This mark wasn't mere ink. It was a silent testament to survival, sacrifice, and secrets kept. Trent's breathing grew faster, his earlier arrogance melting into tension. His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white, but his steps faltered as Eva shifted again, her presence filling the space between them without a single sound. Then, with a deliberate inhale, she took a micro-step forward, weight moving gracefully to the balls of her feet. Her eyes remained locked on Trent's, steady and unwavering. The entire tent seemed to exhale with her movement. Time itself slowed, folding around the charged space like a thick fog. The unspoken challenge was no longer a threat. It was a promise, a moment suspended on the cusp of history. The stillness that had hung thick in the air broke suddenly, like the sharp crack of a rifle shot. Eva moved, but not with frantic energy or reckless speed. Instead, her motion was smooth, fluid, almost effortless, born of years of relentless training, experience, and discipline. It was a controlled, deliberate motion, the kind that only comes from having faced death and emerged tempered, like steel forged in a furnace. Her feet pivoted lightly on the dusty floor, knees bending with precision. The weight of her body shifted gracefully, channeling every muscle into one exact movement. Her hand reached out, not wildly, but with surgical intent, guided by instinct and calculation. Danny Trent barely had time to process the shift. His eyes widened, his confidence shattered in an instant. The strike wasn't loud or violent. It was a redirection of his own momentum, a flick of the wrist that sent him sprawling backward before he could even mount a defense. The impact was enough to knock the wind from him and shatter the facade of bravado that had been his armor. He hit the ground hard, chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. His expression was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and the dawning recognition that he had just been outclassed, utterly and completely. A hush descended on the crowd. No cheers, no mocking laughter, only the weighty silence of awe and respect. Everyone present was caught in the gravity of the moment, as if they had witnessed something both rare and profound. General Malcolm Pierce stepped forward, his expression unreadable but his eyes gleaming with understanding. The same quiet recognition that Eva carried in her steady gaze now settled over the general's face. Staff Sergeant Kravitz exhaled softly, her lips parting in silent acknowledgement of the truth now revealed. Private Morgan clutched the brim of her cap, a breathless witness to history. The tattoo on Eva's forearm, the stark, black emblem of the Ghost Unit survivors, caught the light, its meaning no longer hidden or doubted. It was a symbol of sacrifice, loss, and resilience, the badge of an elite few who had survived the unthinkable and returned changed forever. Trent lay still, humbled and shaken. He no longer had words. The arrogant mask was gone, replaced by the stark reality of being confronted with a quiet legend, a living testament to strength and endurance beyond his understanding. Eva extended her hand, not in triumph, but in grace. Her gaze was steady, her presence calm, embodying a dignity that needed no validation. The tension in the tent dissolved like mist under the morning sun. The crowd exhaled as one, the unspoken lesson settling deep in every heart. This was not just a nurse. This was a warrior who carried her history silently, a ghost in plain sight, whose strength demanded respect without demanding attention. The stunned silence lingered for a heartbeat, then began to ripple outward like stones dropped into a still pond. Faces around the tent shifted from shock to awe, whispers crawling between the gathered medics and soldiers. Eyes locked on Eva, no longer just a nurse, but a figure cloaked in untold history and quiet power. Private Morgan's voice broke first, trembling but clear. That tattoo. It's the Ghost Unit. Only a handful survived that mission in Mosul. Staff Sergeant Kravitz nodded, her gaze never leaving Eva. She's one of the legends. They thought she was gone. General Pierce stepped forward, his expression heavy with both regret and respect. Eva Ramirez, he said quietly. You were declared Kia 3 years ago. No one expected to see you here. Eva met his gaze without hesitation, her voice calm but weighted. I came back. But some battles don't end with medals or parades. Danny Trent, still on the ground, looked up at her with a mix of disbelief and shame. I had no idea. The crowd's mood shifted from skepticism to reverence. The invisible barrier separating Eva from the others had been shattered, not by boastful words or violence, but by the undeniable truth etched on her skin and displayed in her unwavering presence. Flashbacks flickered through the minds of several witnesses, articles from classified debriefs, whispered stories from comrades, faded photographs in dusty albums. The legacy of the Ghost Unit was no longer a myth. It was alive. The tension that once filled the tent gave way to a profound silence, heavy with unspoken apology and newfound respect. Eva did not gloat. Instead, she offered a small, dignified nod. The lesson was clear. Strength is not loud. It is quiet. Presence is not demand, but earned. General Pierce spoke softly. You remind us all what true sacrifice means. As the medics began to return to their duties, the atmosphere in the tent had irrevocably changed. No longer would Eva be just the nurse. She was a survivor, a warrior, a ghost whose story would now be known. The atmosphere in the tent shifted palpably. The electric tension that had crackled moments ago dissolved, replaced by a quiet reverence that settled like a soft blanket over everyone present. Eva stood tall, her posture both relaxed and unwavering, carrying the invisible weight of years of sacrifice and resilience. There was no trace of triumph in her expression, only a calm dignity reclaimed after years of being unseen, misunderstood, and underestimated. Danny Trent slowly pushed himself up from the dusty ground, wincing slightly as he rubbed the side where Eva had gently yet decisively knocked him off balance. His face was pale, shadows of humiliation and disbelief mingling with a newfound humility. For the first time, the bravado that once masked his insecurities was stripped away, replaced by a raw sincerity. He hesitated a moment before taking a tentative step forward. The eyes of the entire tent tracked him, waiting. Trent's voice, when it came, was low, measured, and unmistakably genuine. Eva, he began, his tone unsteady but earnest, I owe you an apology. For doubting you, for mocking you in front of everyone. I never stopped to think about who you really are, or what you've been through. Eva's lips softened into a faint, almost imperceptible smile, subtle but powerful. It was a quiet acknowledgement, the kind that carries far more weight than words ever could. She nodded once, dignified and composed, accepting the apology without fanfare or drama. Staff Sergeant Lena Kravitz stepped forward, her voice steady and calm, carrying the tone of someone who had seen enough to understand the deeper lessons hidden beneath moments like these. Sometimes, she said, glancing around at the others, strength doesn't roar. It doesn't demand attention. It's quiet. It carries itself with a power that doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. Around the tent, murmurs of agreement rippled. The lesson was sinking in, slowly but surely, as the respect that had been withheld was now beginning to take root. Eva's gaze drifted to the tattoo on her forearm, the emblem of the Ghost Unit survivors. The ink was more than just a mark on her skin. It was a testament to a life shaped by hardship, loss, and the silent endurance of those who serve in the shadows. Now, it also symbolized something renewed, respect earned, a story acknowledged, a quiet victory reclaimed. General Malcolm Pierce cleared his throat, his voice carrying a firm finality. Let this moment be a reminder. Never judge someone by appearances, and never underestimate those who carry their battles silently. The room fell into a contemplative hush. His words echoed in the minds of everyone present. Eva turned away to resume her work, the weight of the moment lingering behind her. But before stepping back into the rhythm of her duties, she glanced once more at Trent, eyes steady and calm. Respect isn't given, she said softly, her voice carrying the wisdom of hard-earned experience. It's earned, and sometimes it must be reclaimed. With that, she moved forward, not with arrogance or pride, but with a serene strength that left an indelible impression long after she had gone. 3 months had passed since that fateful day in the triage tent, and the base had begun to change in subtle but meaningful ways. The dusty, makeshift medical tent where the confrontation had unfolded was now replaced by a bright, orderly training facility, a space dedicated not only to physical preparedness, but to the cultivation of discipline, respect, and resilience. Here, Eva Ramirez had carved out a new role, not as just a nurse tending wounds in the shadows, but as a respected instructor and mentor to the next generation of soldiers and medics. Her tattoo, the emblem of the Ghost Unit survivors, was no longer hidden beneath rolled-up sleeves or worn in silence. It had become a quiet symbol of honor, a testament to sacrifice and survival that inspired those who saw it. New recruits would glance at the mark with wide eyes, their curiosity met by Eva's calm, unhurried demeanor. She never boasted or explained unless asked. Instead, she taught through example, through her steady hands, her measured words, and the deep well of experience that lent gravity to every lesson. Danny Trent had changed too. The cocky, dismissive man who had once mocked her was now different, humble, attentive, and eager to learn. He approached Eva not just for medical training but for guidance in discipline and mindset, quietly acknowledging the depth of wisdom she carried. Their relationship had shifted from tense confrontation to mutual respect, built on the shared understanding of hard-earned lessons. General Malcolm Pierce occasionally observed Eva's training sessions from a distance, his stoic presence a quiet endorsement of the impact she had on the unit. He recognized in her a rare strength, a warrior's spirit tempered by grace and humility. Eva was more than a survivor. She was a beacon of quiet leadership and resilience. Staff Sergeant Lena Kravitz and Private Haley Morgan, once skeptical observers, had become regular students in Eva's classes. Their initial doubts transformed into admiration as they absorbed not only technical skills, but the unspoken truths about strength, sacrifice, and dignity that Eva embodied. They carried her story forward, a living reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and true power often walks silently among us. In quieter moments, Eva traced the edges of her tattoo, her thoughts drifting back to the mission that nearly claimed her life and the comrades she lost. Those memories no longer weighed solely as burdens, but stood as a legacy, a solemn tribute to those who had gone before and a guiding light for those who would come after. As the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training floor, Eva stood tall, not by demanding attention, but because she had earned it through unwavering strength and quiet dignity. The story she lived by was clear and enduring. True strength is silent. Dignity doesn't demand attention, it earns it. The evening had settled softly over the base, bathing the training facility in warm amber light. Eva stood by a window, watching shadows stretch long across the grounds. The quiet hum of activity drifted from distant corridors, footsteps, low conversations, the shuffle of determined movement. It was the pulse of a community, shaped by shared purpose and respect. In this moment of stillness, Eva reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the depths of war zones to the quiet halls of healing and instruction. The scars she carried, both visible and invisible, were not marks of weakness but badges of resilience. Each was a story of sacrifice, loss, and survival. Her encounter with Danny Trent was not just a clash of wills. It was a mirror reflecting how society often misunderstands quiet strength. Too often, appearances and assumptions cloud judgment. The bravado of a loud voice can overshadow the silent power beneath a calm demeanor. But true strength, the kind that withstands fire and loss, does not shout. It endures. It commands respect without demanding it. Eva's story became a lesson for many, that dignity is reclaimed not through loud confrontation, but through steady presence, discipline, and grace. That humility does not mean invisibility, and that the quiet ones often carry the heaviest burdens, yet they hold the deepest strength. The room behind Eva filled slowly with trainees gathering for her final session of the day. She turned, the lines of experience softening into a gentle smile. Her eyes met those of the young soldiers and medics, some skeptical, some eager, all attentive. "Remember this," she said, voice calm but firm. "Strength isn't always the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the quietest. And dignity is not given. It's earned every day in how you carry yourself when no one is watching." A hush fell over the room, a space open for reflection and change. As the session began, Eva felt a quiet satisfaction. The past had shaped her, but it did not define her. She was no longer just a survivor or a ghost. She was a living testament to what it meant to rise, to reclaim, and to lead with silent strength. True strength is silent. Dignity doesn't demand attention, it earns it. And that truth would carry on long after the final lesson was taught. 3 months after that quiet reckoning in the triage tent, the base felt different, not just in structure, but in spirit. The training room where Eva now taught was a place where stories of resilience were quietly honored, and the lessons of strength and dignity echoed in every corner. Eva stood at the front of the class, surrounded by young faces eager to learn. The tattoo on her forearm, once hidden beneath sleeves and silence, caught the soft light streaming through the windows. It was no longer just a mark of survival, it was a beacon. Nearby, Danny Trent listened intently, his respect now etched plainly in his demeanor. He was learning not just how to heal wounds, but how to carry himself with the quiet strength Eva embodied. General Pierce watched from the back, nodding subtly. He knew this was more than training, it was legacy building. The base, the people, the very culture was changing. As the session ended, Eva stepped outside into the fading sunlight. The sky was painted in hues of gold and crimson, a reminder that even after darkness, light returns. She took a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs. Her thoughts lingered on those lost, the battles fought, and the journey ahead. With quiet dignity, she pulled down her sleeve for a moment, revealing the tattoo, the symbol of the Ghost Unit survivors. A silent promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. A nearby soldier approached and, with genuine respect, said, "You've changed everything here." Eva smiled softly, eyes reflecting the strength of countless untold stories. "True strength is silent," she replied. "Dignity doesn't demand attention, it earns it." And with that, she walked forward, not to seek recognition, but to carry on a legacy of resilience, honor, and quiet power that would inspire generations to come. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.